today, and I'm sure there's a long way to go, and this conference would help each one of us to enhance our knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for motivating us and inspiring us, for always keeping up events like this. So thank you once again for joining us for this inaugural session. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is my proud privilege to introduce you all to our respected guest of honor, Dr. Rakesh Mohan Joshi, Senior Professor, Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. Professor Joshi is a professor and chairperson and International Collaboration and Research IIFT, and is a distinguished academician and an eminent author and a renowned management expert. He is nominated by the President of India as member University Court, Delhi University. He is an independent director on the board of Ramagundam Fertilizers and Chemicals Limited, a JV of NFL, EIL, and FCIL, Management Council member, All India Management Association, IMA. He had been on the Board of Management, Rajasthan Technical University, IIFT, and Board of Governors, Indian Institute of Foreign Management, are besides some other universities. He conducted training programs, teaching, research, and consultancy in several countries, including China, United States, United Kingdom, France, Italy, Switzerland, Russia, UAE, Singapore, and many more. Professor Joshi has been the chief resource person for prestigious e-learning course for Asian Productivity Organization Japan for participants based in Cambodia, Philippines, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Islamic Republic of Iran, Nepal, Pakistan, and Thailand. Professor Joshi has a scholarly aptitude and a flair for writing. His books, International Business and International Marketing, published by Oxford University Press, are widely prescribed across the world. His case studies were awarded by London Business School and published internationally. He is highly sought after Indian professor as an expert, speaker, and author in conferences, workshops, and several other national and international forums. My words will actually be too short and small for the unique kind of profile that Sir has. So we are extremely thankful to you for sparing your valuable time and being part of the program today. So I request to share your words of wisdom with us. So with this, over to you, Dr. Joshi. Joshi sir, am I audible and visible?
I need to unmute. Okay. Thank you so much, and I am highly grateful to your institute, for inviting me. And we have got illuminaries like Professor Sahasrabuddhe Saab, Namaskar and Pranam, Director of the Institute, Dr. Vidyaji, and then Shri Arpitji, and most importantly, Manojji, who reached me for this wonderful program. It has been my pleasure to come to your institute physically, but I think when you talk of transforming, we have already transformed from being physical to virtual now. And I think the topic taken by you is extremely wonderful because it comes from, from the Prime Minister, and something which makes India very unique in the community of nation is that I think, what we talk is what Prime Minister talks is, and what we have also inculcated in our new education policy is the culture. Culture is a very, very important aspect of it. When you talk of India, India has been a great force, economically, socially, and culturally across the world. I was very happy when, Professor Manoj was talking about that Samudra Manthan and getting the nectar out of this. I find it, very difficult to be palatable that Samudra Manthan, which took place in our ancient scriptures, is absolutely missing from the public platform. But most of you, when you travel to a place called Bangkok in Thailand, on the airport they have got a big sculpture of that Samudra Manthan, and which I think the India has missed. And I'm very grateful, to the government and all the policymakers, including Professor Sahasrabuddhe ji, that in the new education policy that we have inculcated the culture as a very, very important aspect. India is a society that we are not moving ahead. Even if you talk, culturally we talk a lot, on various forms. I do write for for organizer Panchajan and all those things. But let me talk even of economically. At the beginning of the Christian era, the 1 AD or the beginning of the Christian era, India's share in the world GDP was 32%, and America was absolutely non-existent. It was only 1492 when the Columbus searched America, and America became a big power. So I think it is again going back to our cultural traits. And I think history is extremely important for all of us to understand for transforming this country. Something which has been very typical to this country, which we always talk, the mantra in international marketing and internationalization is adaptation to the foreign culture. It is only the Indian culture which adapted to the foreign culture and no other culture adapted. And this makes India great. India is the only country wherein, right from Mahabharata, where you see Ahimsa Paramo Dharma, then Bhagwan Buddha came, which is considered to be the 9th incarnation of Vishnu in the Vishnu Puran, and then Mahavir came. So Ahimsa Paramo Dharma, Ahimsa was great, and then Gandhiji came. So non-violence is the only thing that India has taught. But even if you see the recent history of the other countries, you talk of Germany, because people don't want to talk about that, but I also will not talk. But even if you talk of China, the Chinese Revolution, and it is not very old, it is as recent as 1966 to 95, when the Mao's revolution, that in the Red Book, what he read is, all the teachers in the Chinese institution were slaughtered by their own student in a culture which is so proud of their teacher. But India, we have never done so, and therefore I am extremely confident of this country which is going. When we talk of the internationalization, internationalization, as I told you, in the beginning of the century in 1900, India's share in the world trade was 25%. Even in 1605, when Jahangir came, when Thomas Roe came into the court of Jahangir, Agra was the most populated city on the earth, and probably that time Akbar was the richest man in the history this world has seen, among the top 3-4 richest men ever the world has produced. And if you see, from there, our share in the trade now has declined to 1.7%. When you come to the recent, the share, India's trade, I think, when we talk of, the perform, reform, transform, and perform and transform, which is, I think, absolutely perfect. If you see for the last, say, 20 years, India's GDP, has not grown double digit, wherein China's GDP has grown double digit. China, in 1980, China's total GDP was less than India. Till 1991, China's per capita GDP was less than India. But today, China's GDP is 5 times that of India. When you talk about the export, I think this time I work very closely with the government. I work very closely with the Ministry of Commerce, and I think I've done a lot of even the organizational restructuring of the export promotion councils with the Ministry of Commerce. You find that for last 10 years, India's share in the world market is hovering around 300 to 300 US dollar. Anyway, this time, because of the COVID, we could not touch even 290 or so. But I think the way we are going, the next year it would be almost 330, 340. But what is very important is the India plans to have its share in the world market, somewhere from 1.7% to at least 5%. Or India's trade, we what we have forecasted in various our policy documents is from $330 billion to almost $5 trillion by 24-25. So it means our trade should grow somewhere between 25 to 30% every year, and which is absolutely a formidable task. And this is extremely important, to make India a 10 trillion economy. And this is where we talk of reform. As you have seen that, over the last 2-3 months, I've written a lot in various financial newspapers and the national newspapers on the agriculture reform. Incidentally, I have got some sort of expertise in agriculture because I did my MTech in dairy technology very recent, and therefore everybody talks of reform. And when it comes to the reform, I will like to call upon the intellectuals. When you talk of the free trade theories, all of you, and when the government is taking a measure, to bring agriculture out of clutches of the middlemen, I am very unsure that why all intellectuals are silent. as you are aware that as a professor, I've been very vocal to write that most intellectuals probably have become opportunists, because these are the reforms which we were talking for last 20, 30 years. And the big problem was stranglehold of the mandis on the farmers, because I teach these DOPT or the refresher courses to IAS officers and Indian Foreign Service and all Indian Revenue Service, and I interact them very closely even on informal basis. I very distinctly recall even 10-15 years before they were talking that these mandis are the big problem. Now when the farmers are given opportunity to sell their goods elsewhere, I am not very sure why intellectuals have kept a deafening silence, which I think I have written. But anyway, we are going on a big thing, and two important aspects that I think we have gone. One is what we call as a vocal for local, or you call it as a Swadeshi movement. The Swadeshi movement is not new to India, because the Swadeshi movement was Gandhiji also talked about it, and I think because India can do it, because I think 1.34 billion people, it's a big market, and all multinationals are looking at India not for their love for it, but they are looking at India because of a large market, and not only large market, the fastest growing rate of economy, 8%, 9%, and probably the way we are going, and you have seen as a result, our trade deficit has reduced, our significance have reduced, and incidentally I covered this budget very live on the Doordarshan DD News, and therefore you see the way, I understand whatever the constraints are, but it's extremely important to identify the products in which we can, because you have taken this from the Prime Minister, let me talk of that, because you talk of that, in one of the Mann Ki Baat, he talked about that, the saffron, the kesar. Now, kesar, India import, almost $16 million of kesar from other countries, so especially Iran, it cannot come, so it comes from Pakistan. Iran is the largest producer of, this. So I think we need to, there is a lot of things that we need to do, and I think the government has introduced a lot of schemes, like the PLI is one, which is a very, very successful scheme. And last year prior to COVID, because I did the the World Bank research on making India a global hub for especially marketing the dairy product. India, with 200 million metric ton of milk, is the largest producer of milk on the world. India produces more than double the milk that the America produces. We have come a long way, but our productivity remains minimum. And I think in business India, I wrote a few, Business India and Financial Express also I've written that very important, which you have competitiveness. Unless we achieve competitiveness, it is very difficult that India will become a global force. Now, competitiveness, I think there are various measures, but for a very simple purpose, we use the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Index, which, if you see that in 2007, India's rank in the Global Competitiveness Index was 48. In 2016, we made some progress and our rank was 39. But in 2019, India's rank slipped to 68, and even now in 2020, it is 58th rank. So what is very important is, because I think we work very closely on Global Competitiveness Index, unless India become competitive in this is absolutely important. So I think this requires a holistic strategy to do that, and which I think we need to do. And very importantly, what again going with the Prime Minister talked is local to global. Now, anyway, I'm very happy that now people are talking about globalization and global in the market. Incidentally, I become more happy or happier being a professor of globalization and a global marketing and a global business. So I think, and this is probably the first time that, even the new education policy talks of, India making a global hub for, the education. And, it is not only this that the education policy has done it. Professor Sahasrabudhe is there. It is probably the first time that the government of India had a proactive strategy to interact with the foreign missions, and the foreign experts to globalize our education. And one of such was, which I think I also attended, where Professor Sahasrabudhe was there. It was with the United States of America, wherein we interacted with the missions as those. Very importantly, if you find almost 3 lakh students, from India, 2.83 lakh student goes abroad every year, but the inflow is almost 54,000, 5,000 students for last 10 years, which is, the inflow is not increasing. If you see the inflow, what basically happen is our students basically come from Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Afghanistan, Maldives, Mauritius. So, we need to, like in trade, what we do is, the diversity in terms of the product and diversity in terms of the market. Herein, what is very important is that, how India become a global hub, wherein the foreign students keep on coming. Anyway, India is working very closely, and, the UGC is working more speedily than you think, in bringing on these regulations. How in the twinning degrees, the joint degrees, and very soon you will see, things in the field. But something which I think comes is when you talk to any foreign educators, they talk that, we can collaborate with you, and they provide, some great inputs. But, what I want is there has to be balance. Not only that the Indian students go abroad, but the foreign students comes to this. So India also have a revenue earning mechanism for which improvement of quality is one, and more than that is, recognition of the mutual standards. Because in the product also, I always talk, because, I work very closely with all FTA negotiations. When we talk of the SAARC negotiation, we talk of the RCEP. Incidentally, India did not. Now, I think India is very closely, we are working on the United States. And very recently, last week, I submitted a report for India-European Union Foreign Trade Agreement, wherein one of our important aspects, to this is the non-tariff barrier, and, or non-tariff barrier in the product. But services, the non-tariff barriers are much more. Services is a field wherein India has got a positive balance of trade, and education is a great service which is totally unexplored in this country. And what you have got, the foreign standard, you have got ACSB in management, you have got EMBA, you have got foreign journals to publish. There are two things. One is India, the education, all about it. The quality of education is one, and the Indian authorities which are having these standards, there has to be mutual recognition of this standard. Maybe it is AICT approved or NAC approved or UGC approved or whatever you call. There has to be some mutual recognition of a standard on which we need to bilaterally and multilaterally negotiate with all foreign policy makers. So there has to be mutual recognition of the degrees among each other, number one, and B is the mutual, the recognition of standard. Now, let me tell you about the management. You are a management institute. In case you need to have a student or a faculty from any of the, the American university or a European university, they will call you for triple accreditation. I am very sure that you have invited some of the imported professors also in this. Later on, they will ask you about EMBA, they will ask you about ACSB, and so these are the standard. So what they call is a triple accreditation. Why don't they accept our NAC accreditation or AICT accreditation or a UGC accreditation? Anyway, I understand there are certain limitations which we are ready to remove. We can have certain grading into that, but there has to be a point wherein the mutual recognition of educational standard, and I think we need to lobby it, we need to fight it, because in India not all the institutes are, we have got some institutes which are better than most American institutes. India has got institutes which have got better than most European institutes. So this is one area that I think we need to work into that, and then I think we need to transform. I'm sure that the education we are working on transforming, but at the same time, something which is extremely important for us to transform is that the products as well that you become. One of the leading hubs. You have seen the electronic product, you have seen the mobile product, wherein, almost in many of these things, the 70% of the products are being imported. So India is also not a part of the global supply chain in the international markets. So that also we need to do. And incidentally, I am also in, certain, I work very closely with the International Dairy Federation, wherein now I think all international committees have also, we have formed a separate mechanism of what we call the self-reliance or a self-dependency. So kindly don't think the self-reliance only India is talking, but the most countries are worried. what they call about the balance of trade. And when you talk of the balance of trade, means the countries need to export more and import less. And therefore, and the global, the biggest problem which came in this, COVID-19 was the over interdependence of the supply chains among each other. So anyway, then we are not talking that all these supply chains are to be disrupted, but supply chains have to be smaller one. And therefore, I think, in India also, when you talk on export, India is working very, very, meticulously on restructuring the institutional mechanism. It is probably the first time in last 5 to 7 years that the states have told that they have to make their own export development plan. Incidentally, I have worked with most of the states to help them in developing their export development plan. Now we have come one step further, wherein the Prime Minister has also said that every district has to identify a product for export. And I think very recently I met district collectors and commissioners even in Delhi. The thing is, absolutely they have no idea as to what this whole system is, what international markets are. So anyway, we are helping each of the districts. So this goes from states to the district, which is absolutely, if you take an example of Germany. Germany is a great example, because Germany is a great example. Why? Germany,
Joshi sir, I'm so sorry of intervening in between. It is just that I wanted to remind you.
Okay, 1 minute.
Time.
Okay,
yes,
sir.
1 minute. 2 minutes, sir, to conclude. No worries, please.
No, you don't worry. I'll conclude. So I was like America. They have got America. Incidentally, I have very microscopically studied how the other countries have performed well in their export. China has become the largest exporter in the world with 2.5 trillion export. India has got 330 billion dollars of export. China has got 5 to 6 times of their export. Now I have also carried out a very, very minute study across the country how their institutional mechanism work. I was telling you about Germany. Germany is great. Germany, the Nazi Germany was great, but Germany is great even now. In the European Union, some of the most mighty economic power is there. It is Germany. So Germany has got provincial level of export promotion programs. Germany has got the programs, district level export promotion, and they have got proactive approach to promotion. China has got a centralized export promotion department, wherein the America is a federal structure, the provinces, the products, and the federal government, the seamless. I'm very sure that we are also working on that, and I think we'll do. And India will perform better. But I think one thing which I like the most, with the government, that to become the world leader, in the international market and the economic farm, which in the cultural language we call as the Vishwa Guru. India was always a Vishwa Guru. You need to perform yourself. Uddhared Atmanatmanam, you must uplift yourself by your own self. Natmanam avsa